Good morning, everyone. This is update for August 9, 2022, day 167 of the war, end of the date update. So we're going to start today with general strategic questions. And as you can see, this is going to be about energy, specifically crude oil. So Ukrainian government stopped passage of the Russian crude oil through Ukraine. There's a pipeline, as you can see, there's light blue. This pipeline system is called Druzhba, or friendship in English, and it has three main branches. You can see one goes to Baltics and essentially goes to ships and then exported around the world. And apparently, there was also built to this area near St. Petersburg on the border with Estonia. Then there's another major one goes to Germany, which is large consumer. And as you can see, there are two major oil refineries in eastern Germany that are dependent on Russian oil. One is Schwedt, and the other one is Leuna. And then there's the southern branch that feeds Czech Republic, Slovakia, Austria, and Hungary. So this was cut off by Ukrainian government. The formal excuse is that Russian operator is not able to pay in US dollars, and therefore, Ukrainian government says you're not paying, then we're not letting you pass. We're not allowing your crude oil to pass through our pipeline. But the real reason is obviously this desire by Ukrainian government to inflict as much pain on Russia as possible. In our opinion, it's absolutely misguided decision because it creates more problems in Central Europe, and it's not going to resolve any problems. As you can, crude is excellent commodity for global trade, so it can be easily redirected, reloaded on ships, and exported around the world. So there's not going to be much problem for Russia to sort of redirect all of this. The other thing that's related to this whole system is that actually Germany started switching from Russian oil, and specifically these two refineries in Schwedt and Leuna. They received today or yesterday first cargo from the US with US crude oil. So it looks like they're going to be switching to US crude oil from the Russian crude oil. So essentially, the central branch is also going to be dead. I wouldn't be surprised if the northern one is also going to be dead, but because Lithuania and Latvia are pretty aggressive in terms of sanctions against Russia. So, but nevertheless, as you can see, there's this dark line that goes to Ust-Luga. It's on the so that Russia will be able to export it, and that's not going to be a problem for them anyways. So that's what's going on here. Then in terms of Germany, Germany is switching because Europe actually generally stops buying Russian coal starting August 10, and so Germany's and probably the rest of the Europe is switching to Colombian coal and Australian coal, which they started receiving. So now they sort of switch from Russia as the main supplier to other countries, probably going to be a little bit more expensive. Nevertheless, it's right decision in terms of Germany restarted its coal-fired power plants, restarted its nuclear, and that's actually why, as you can see, euro stabilized and didn't go below $1. That was the main reason that was driving euro below $1 is as long. And so as soon as Germany made this decision, the euro stabilized, because it means that the European and specifically German economy, which is powerhouse essentially, is gonna survive. It's gonna have a lot of sort of losses, but it's gonna survive. Then in terms of Nord Stream 1, which goes through the Baltic Sea here, that still works at 20% capacity. Nevertheless, Germany was able to bring up its inventory of natural gas for the winter to about 75% of what is needed. So it's getting there. There's still time. So we're assuming that, well, not assuming, we know that they buying LNG from the world market on paying the spot prices, which are obviously very, very high. That actually then creates a domino effect for some countries, more poorer countries such as Bangladesh. As you can see, there are unrest. There is unrest there. It's driven by the fact that Europe and Germany in particular are buying all of this LNG on the spot market that used to go to sort of less developed countries in Asia, and now they don't have it because Europe got it. So that was also kind of, as you can see, this is how like kind of dominoes fall and how they sort of work together. Now let's actually look at other energy situation now in Ukraine. So if you remember, there is a huge nuclear power plant here in Ukraine in Enerhodar that produces now about 20% of Ukrainian electricity or power generation in Ukraine. Now it's obviously occupied by Russian troops. So what's going on? And you probably see on TV and everywhere that there is some kind of like a shooting around this nuclear power plant, and sort of, but probably not very clear explanation why this is happening and what is happening. So what is happening is Russia trying to um, sort of reintegrate this nuclear power plant into Russian power grid. And what they're doing, they need two things. First, they need to take the electricity that's generated by this power plant and direct it to the Russian grid, which they did actually. So they connected this. There is a power line that goes through Nova Kakhovka here. Again, this, sort of we all know at this point this place because it's where the dam is, and so where that's being attacked quite frequently. And so basically, there's a power line goes to Nova Kakhovka, and then they connected this Nova Kakhovka to Crimean power grid. So that's how. So Russian sort of administration already did kind of like a half of the job, so that technically now they can take the electricity back into Russian power grid. The only part that's still sort of in progress and about to be finished is actually control over the power this power station. So what they do, they trying to lay the fiber optic network. So they got it to Melitopol here, and then now they trying to build a link to Enerhodar. So that allows Russian Rosatom to control it remotely and do all of the stuff. So, and they already loaded software at the nuclear power plant. So there's only very little left before this. Once these two pieces together, this nuclear power plant will be disconnected from Ukrainian network, and it will work for the sort of Russian network. So Ukrainian command is trying to prevent it, and that's why you're seeing this attacks towards Nova Kakhovka to destroy that transformers and everything that's in Nova Kakhovka that connects it to Russian grid in Crimea. So that's why you see these attacks. And apparently there are some attacks in Enerhodar with the same idea to damage basically the power lines so that this power plant cannot be integrated into Russian system. So that's just explanation of what's going on there, so everybody better have a better sense of what's going on there. And in general, all of this, in terms of danger, all of this power plants, they dual purpose, and generally in pretty much everywhere in the world where they are, the ones that built before, let's say 1990, they had all dual purpose, military and civilian, because they were supposed to produce plutonium for nuclear bombs. So they, and because there is integration of this kind of like dual sort of goal, they are much more complex and they are much more dangerous, and things can they easier to kind of get out of control and sort of have very negative consequences. So if they were just civilian use, that would be much more simple system that's easier to manage and much more safer by design. So by design, they kind of designed less safer in order to allow military application. And actually, the blow up in Chernobyl, which we probably will never find out at this point for sure, but from the sources that we know and sort of the problem was there is actually military experiments that were going there and production of the plutonium for nuclear bombs, and that process went out of control, and that created all of that blow up. It's not wasn't just if it were simply civilian use, it would just work without any problems. So as you can see, they're all inherently dangerous, and the same actually in the West. So this is not just sort of Soviet Union sort of legacy. The same is in the US, the same is in France, the same is in UK. So Japan is the same kind of stuff. So it's the systems are pretty much all the same sort of Cold War type of system. So this is a situation with the energy. I forgot. So what is Russia doing? Because Europe is starting to stops buying coal starting August 10th from Europe. So they do typical maneuver that they all do was that they did with crude. They're just redirecting it to India, which is typical. We already know it's typical buyer. And then also Turkey. We wouldn't be surprised that they also there's something going on with China. We don't have that information, but we're pretty sure that China is a big consumer of coal for power generation. So we wouldn't be surprised to see China consuming Russian coal, given that there is confrontation with the US and Australia. And they, even though they started buying Australian coal, but they probably would be more than happy to buy Russian coal, so that sort of not to be dependent on potential adversary or in a conflict. That's a situation with all this energy. Now let's discuss a little bit Ukrainian financial system. So we discussed Ukrainian, the whole financial currency system is in trouble and free fall, which reflects the economy, because economy is the sort of basis, and then financial system is on top of it, and it's just a mirror that's reflecting the health of the economy. And so today was the first bank that went bankrupt, that was declared bankrupt by the Ukrainian central bank. So specifically, what happened that a bank got refinancing from the central bank because of the war, and they could not repay that refinancing. Basically, what this means is the bank had a lot of non-performing loans and couldn't sort of survive, so they kind of like went to the lender of last resort, central bank. Central bank gave them money. It just essentially extended agony of this bank, and eventually it went bankrupt. It's a small bank, but this is more of a sort of sign of the general trend. What is happening with Ukrainian financial system? It's simply imploding, and in the next couple months we'll see more banks going belly up, and also more problems with Ukrainian currency and so on, because Ukrainian government is completely inept and doing extremely bad job of sort of managing through difficult times. So that's the situation with Ukrainian banking system. And then also what was going on with Ukrainian, by the way, just quick update on Ukrainian foreign currency reserves, which is think about your savings account that Ukraine has. Ukraine lost in months of July only about 0.4 of a billion, so basically 400 million US dollars of its reserves, which is actually pretty good result, the best result probably since the start of the war. And the reason for that, because Ukrainian government decided to devalue Ukrainian currency, if you remember, from 29 hryvnias per $1 to 36.5. So that allowed to slow down drainage of the FX reserves, it's not gonna prevent, because actual exchange rate right now it's somewhat stabilized at 41, 42 hryvnias per US dollar. So it's still below actual market. So there's still going to be drainage, probably not as fast as it used to be. Then let's actually touch a little bit Russia, what's going on, demographic situation in Russia, which is bad. So there were sort of statistical information on the birth rate in Russia. So June to June, so June 2022 versus June 21, the birth rate went down by 9.6%, which is huge if you think about that. And just to kind of how it stands relative to Ukraine, we don't have the data right now, but Ukraine is even worse, probably 18%. So both countries are in sort of demographic disaster, which obviously reflects extremely terrible governance in both countries. And this is all started actually during Soviet time, so this is sort of like a long-lasting disaster that's sort of a slowly developing disaster, and this obviously stems from the Soviet time, from the communism. Nevertheless, this accelerates, and for that reason, actually, if you look at the demographics of the troops that are fighting, you can see a lot of old people. That's a result of this demographic disasters that both countries are going through. With on a relative scale, Ukraine has sort of more disaster versus Russia, but they basically both are falling pretty quickly. That's a general update on the situation. So general update. Now let's switch to the situation on the front lines. I'm gonna start from the north and do it in clockwise fashion. So first of all, before that, in terms of HIMARS strikes, there are no new news about the strikes against the bridges. So that's probably Ukrainian command is trying to prepare. Maybe there's a shortage of the rockets, because U.S. U.S. sort of command mentioned that they're not going to provide more launchers. Ukraine has sufficient launchers, which we agree, and Ukraine really needs more rockets. And so our understanding is that there are sometimes shortages of those rockets, and that's why there's this kind of like inconsistent attacks on the Russian controlled infrastructure right now. In terms of now, let's actually go through the front line. There's sort of this section that goes along the state border is facing the same situation, exchange of artillery fire. That's sort of kind of somewhat lower intensity now. Now let's jump to Kharkiv front line. Things here are totally on pause. Nothing is really happening, just small scale skirmishes, but that's just a sort of normal situation. Now let's move to Izyum bridgehead. Things here are also on pause, frozen. Also, we show that attempted Russian attack near from Balaklia. That's also kind of like gone. And as we sort of suspected, it was just a distraction activity, just because Russian command does not have enough troops to do that. Now let's actually move to the North Donbass section of the front line. There are some changes. First of all, the Ukrainian command pulled 56 brigade out of here, and they were moved to Pisky area to stem Russian advances there. We'll discuss it once we get there. In terms of what the situation here is, it's basically where Russian troops are having success is where the Wagner mercenaries are operating. So as you can see, this is like sort of straight east of Bahmut and a little like east of Soledar and a little bit southeast of Soledar. So they slowly but surely getting into Bahmut. and also into Soledar. Let's actually look at the scaled map. So as you can see, they captured this like gypsum factory here. Actually, the what's that? I think the gypsum walls or whatever that's called in English, not sure. Basically, so they captured this large industrial facility here. There's also some news that they managed to capture um, fire resistant brick producing facility here. So it's basically specialized bricks that used for like high heat, like 1,000 degrees Celsius, and so whether then this is the most recent, just kind of like news that just kind of broke out. We didn't update the map, but what this really means that essentially uh, they kind of like almost getting control of the Soledar, and so the situation here is really deteriorating significantly for Ukrainian side. Then also Russian troops attacked towards this village Pidhorodne without success, and then the other area where the Wagner mercenaries are advancing is, as you can see, they kind of getting into Bahmut. They basically controlling this industrial facilities here. One of them is champagne producing plant here. So basically, they slowly, that's what they captured recently on the August 9th. So they slowly moving forward. It is slow, very slow move forward though. But as what we mentioned before, Ukrainian command does not have strategic answer to the, let's say, Russian strategy, and so they slowly but surely lose ground. So this is which is reflected on larger scale map. Then also Ukrainian troops lost control over the village Vershyna here. So it's kind of like more trading the front line, which obviously not a great. It's not a sign of sort of things going well. As you can see, then probably next one is going to be this salient around Kadema, village Kadema. It's probably going to be lost as well pretty soon. So as you can see, the Russian advances here are slowly kind of, it's just a slow grind, but it moves forward. And the main sort of force here are Wagner mercenaries. We discussed this, that the regular Russian troops are extremely low on manpower, on specifically on the infantry, like fighting infantry. However, Wagner mercenaries don't have as acute shortage. That's the first thing. The second, and that's the biggest advantage, then they don't have this Soviet army bureaucracy, right? It's more common sense fighting. It's more like kind of like a modern day pirates slash, let's say, if we would kind of compare it to World War II, it's probably like Dirlewanger brigade type of thing. And the most important that soldiers and the whole unit is not sort of red taped, not disempowered, so they have initiative, and that would it's in a way it's like military entrepreneurs. If you really think, and entrepreneurship always beats government bureaucracy. And Ukrainian forces, the individual soldiers are extremely motivated, but they are within the larger bureaucratic systems that basically disempowers them and makes it much harder for them to actually do their job and defend. So that's kind of like the whole, if we compare why this is happening and how this is happening. So hopefully that kind of provides more color and is in terms of what's going on. Now let's move south to the area west of Donetsk. So here Russian troops try to sort of attack. This is actually here already regular Russian troops. They were not able to advance march. As we can see, the 56th Brigade is defending this area. However, the 56th Brigade is suffering heavy casualties due to the Russian artillery fire. So while Russian infantry is not there and is simply too few of it, eventually the Russian artillery will reduce Ukrainian infantry to the number that would be sort of easy to sort of dislodged by the Russian, by the sort of extremely small sized Russian infantry. So eventually, this balance will tilt into Russian side unless things are changed, and unfortunately, things are not changing. As we discussed, this is Soviet army disempowered, and that's a huge problem, and this is the strategic dead end that Ukrainian command has, and unless it figures and unless it changes, which obviously we're skeptical about that, this problems will just continue growing. So now let's move to Zaporizhia front line. Things here are also on pause, frozen, no changes here. Now let's lastly move to Kherson bridgehead. Things here actually being quiet. Apparently, the attacks against the bridges somewhat working. And our sort of best explanation of what happened here with this attack by 108th Regiment is that was just to paint a picture by Russian command that everything is great, we have enough ammunition, we have enough of everything, and you're not really creating pain for us. That's our just hypothesis. Could be wrong. This is working hypothesis that we have right now. There were no attempts to destroy this Ukrainian small bridgehead. As you can see, there is good size sort of fist on Ukrainian side here. However, the problem is that in terms of sort of looks sort of great on the map. The problem is really training the command. That's horrific, and that this it's not a system that works, right? It's just unfortunately, um, agglomeration of soldiers. A lot of them are very motivated, but the rest of it is lacking, and that's even though they could potentially launch some kind of offensive here towards Novokakhovka, they simply tried, and they could not do this because of limitation that we discussed related to Ukrainian command. So what happens is now uh, sort of like a Ukrainian propaganda talking head, I think his name is Podolyak, came out and just said that all of the conversation about the Ukrainian offensive in this area was just a PSYOP operation. The only question is like, okay, is this PSYOP operation against Ukrainian citizens? So who is the enemy for Podolyak and all of the current Ukrainian leadership? That's a big question. Thanks for watching today, and until tomorrow, bye bye.